The way you beat a guy like that, you're not going to outbox him. If you're waiting on him and he's initiating and he's feinting you into counters and then he's countering the counter, you're going to lose that fight.
You know AJ's chin's gone, right? And I'm not saying that I believe that. I don't believe that. I think getting beaten up by Daniel Dubois does not mean your chin's gone, especially when you keep getting up and you manage to rock him late in the fight and you stayed in the fight. And I think Daniel Dubois is a freak like... AJ is a freak. He's a one-off. Jake Paul is not Daniel Dubois. But some people are genuinely giving Jake Paul a chance. That's blowing my mind here.
Now looking at the age difference, we've got 28 years old compared to 36 years old. So I guess the advantage there goes a little bit towards Jake Paul. 28-year-old is better than a 36-year-old.
Max Kellerman, who is one of the most respected boxing analysts in the sport today, recently sat down and shared his thoughts on a potential matchup that has been getting a lot of attention in the boxing world. He talked about why he genuinely believes that Jake Paul, the YouTube star turned professional boxer, could actually defeat Anthony Joshua, who is a legitimate former heavyweight champion of the world. Now, this might sound crazy to some people, especially the hardcore boxing fans who have followed Joshua's career from the beginning, but Kellerman makes some really interesting points that are worth paying attention to.
He's initiating and he's feinting you into counters and then he's countering the counter. You're going to lose that fight. Joshua has to impose his size, strength, youth, go to the body. He has to be willing to take certain risks. And if he does that...
Kellerman's statement that Jake Paul actually has a legitimate chance to win this fight has caused a huge debate across the entire boxing community and social media platforms. While Kellerman sees real opportunity for Jake Paul to pull off what many would consider a massive upset, there are plenty of other analysts, former fighters, and fans who believe that Jake is literally putting his health and safety on the line by even considering stepping into the ring with someone like Anthony Joshua, who is a former heavyweight champion with serious knockout power. These critics argue that this is not just another fight for Jake Paul, but a potentially dangerous situation where he could face serious consequences against a man who has been knocking out professional heavyweights for years. However, Kellerman has a different perspective on this entire situation, and he spent time breaking down Jake Paul's mental evolution and psychological transformation over the past few years.
Look at the experience that Jake has gained in the 5 years he's been in the sport. To be in your 12th or 13th fight in front of 80,000 people at AT&T Stadium in front of 125 million viewers, that's not experience you can gain normally. So he's going to go into that event very calm and very composed. And I fully believe that he does 100% think he's going to beat Anthony Joshua, yes.
What about the weight? Will there be a limit for Joshua?
So there's a lot of discussion around the weight. Joshua fought Usyk twice. Yeah. Both of those times, Usyk was 221 pounds. Joshua was 240 to 245. When Jake fought Mike Tyson last year, 227 pounds. I expect Jake will come in anywhere between 225 and 230, and Anthony Joshua has a weight limit of 245 pounds.
There will be those, as you're aware, that will look at it and criticise this fight. There already have been, haven't there? They'll say it's a real mismatch. What would you say to them? Are we going to be watching sport at its purest?
I would say it's much less of a mismatch than what you saw with AJ and Francis Ngannou, who a massive man, but relatively no boxing experience. I would say it's much less of a mismatch than AJ's 9th or 10th fight against guys who've been knocked out 20 to 25 times. Given AJ's pedigree, Jake is built for this. Jake is built for the big moments. So do I think it's dangerous for Jake Paul? Absolutely. Do I think it's also dangerous for Anthony Joshua? 100%.
I mean, we're just watching some of these punches being thrown now. Can he take something like that, Jake Paul?
Hey, Alexander Usyk took it, right? I think that was a perfect 1-2 combination by Joshua, again, on a fairly stationary fighter in Francis Ngannou, who had a good performance against Tyson Fury. But I don't think Tyson Fury took that fight serious for one second.
These experts and analysts argue that while Anthony Joshua used to absolutely dominate and destroy heavyweight opponents during his prime years, putting fear into anyone who stepped into the ring with him, today he approaches fights with much more caution and hesitation than he did before. This more cautious and conservative fighting style has become noticeable to anyone who has been following his recent fights closely. Joshua no longer rushes forward with the same aggressive intensity and willingness to take risks that defined his earlier career when he was climbing to the top of the heavyweight
It all
division.
goes incredibly well for Paul. He's not going to land on Joshua, is he? Joshua's going to be far too skilled in evading whatever Jake Paul could throw at him.
Because I don't believe he's an evading fighter. I think he's one of those fighters that is extremely powerful to where a fighter is simply afraid. The problem is that all of the pressure's on Joshua at the moment. So Jake Paul, if he gets knocked out in 12 seconds, he should get knocked out. The problem is as soon as Joshua starts taking damage, all of a sudden he's thinking, the world is watching me, I'm a professional fighter, and I'm getting beat off a YouTuber. All of the pressure is in Joshua, and that's a lot that can weigh on a man.
Just Jake Paul can't damage him, though. Like
people can damage him, though. He's went down.
No, people can.
World
people
champions.
can. Yeah. No, like Alexander Usyk can, Daniel Dubois can, but these are supreme athletes. Jake,
completely correct. Yes, there's a difference in someone who's been boxing their entire life versus a YouTuber. I completely understand that, but you can't deny that Jake Paul has power. I think it's one of his only attributes. I think he's a very poor boxer, but what he does have is a weird technique where you don't
How
know
do we know he's got power? How do we know he's got power?
He's knocked people out.
What Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley?
Yeah.
Tyron Woodley was
Like,
arguably one of the best UFC fighters there's ever been.
Mate. Like,
No, mate. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that he's going to go in there and walk Joshua all over. But you can't deny that he has lights out power. It's just something
I would deny that. I would deny that he has that kind of power.
Yeah, in an amateur boxing ring, yeah, fine, but not against a two-time world champion. We're talking about here.
Again, I understand the contempt in what I'm saying, and I do see how it is completely stupid thinking YouTuber could break Anthony Joshua. But the thing is that he's going to be training for this fight. Joshua has all of the world looking at him thinking you should walk him over. If it gets 2 rounds, 3 rounds inside, I think Joshua loses. Yeah.
You think he gets beat?
I mean, I think the pressure will get to him. I think if he loses to Jake Paul, he's the embarrassment to boxing. And if you get inside 3 rounds where you've not put him away like everyone thinks you will, all of a sudden that pressure to finish the fight as he should is going to gain and gain and gain.
Is there any truth in this, Jamie? Can you see a world where Dan's theory is basically this geezer can punch and he therefore has a puncher's chance? I think he's got no chance. Like slim, if none.
No chance.
None. Literally none.
No chance.
No, it's one of them, innit? I honestly, without going like extreme, Dan, I think Anthony Joshua, if he could only use one hand, wins the fight. I honestly do.
This is the thing, and I love Joshua. You know, he's arguably the pride of Britain when it comes to boxing. He's a great fighter. But could you say he's past his best? Could you say that he's been tested too many times? The thing that it relates to me is when you look at Silva in the UFC, as soon as he got knocked out, his chin became glass. And I think that's the same with Joshua. I don't think he can take a punch anymore. I think he's one of those people where it's almost he damages way too easy now. And it's one of those things where I think when you're a boxer and you've had a few defeats and you've
Tony Jeffries, who is a former Olympic boxer with real credentials and experience at the highest levels of amateur boxing, offer completely different perspective and angle on why Jake Paul should absolutely be taken seriously as a legitimate threat in this potential matchup. Jeffries brings a level of credibility to this conversation that carries weight because he has actually been in the ring at the Olympic level and understands what it takes to compete against elite opposition. He pointed out something that many casual fans might not fully appreciate or understand, which is that Jake Paul has access to every single resource and advantage that a professional fighter could possibly ask for or dream about having at their disposal.
The age difference, we've got 28 years old compared to 36 years old. So I guess the advantage there goes a little bit towards Jake Paul. 28-year-old is better than a 36-year-old. But that being said, we've got talking about experience and everything else, what comes with being 36 years old at Anthony Joshua's level. And then, like I mentioned, the heavyweights kind of seem to prime a little bit older. Now, come down to the height and the weight. This is the big one. 6'1" versus 6'6". 200 pound versus 252 pound. We got a 252 pounder in Anthony Joshua. The reach advantage is a lot, which we would expect. Amateur fights, we can see that Jake's only had one, where AJ's had 43, but 43 of them are including at the highest level, Olympic level. And yes, he won the Olympic bloody gold medal, if I don't need to remind you. Then the pro record, Jake Paul has had 13 fights, lost 1. AJ has had 28 fights and he's lost 4 with 25 KOs. And the one person that Jake Paul lost to was Tommy Fury. Now, can we compare Tommy Fury with Anthony Joshua? Not at all. It's like night and day. So now I'm going to talk about the rules of this fight, and I'll give you my prediction, which is going to shock a lot of people after this. So, what are the rules? The bout will take place at a heavyweight, obviously. It's going to be 8 3-minute rounds. You might think, well, that's better for Jake Paul, and I'm thinking, not really. It's better for Anthony Joshua because he's just going to go all out for them 8 3-minute rounds. And imagine that, Anthony Joshua blasting at you, 6'6", whatever he is, 250 pounds, throwing big bombs at you. Anyway, both fighters will be using 10-ounce gloves for the duration of the contest. Why have they got that on there? It says both fighters will be wearing 10-ounce gloves for the duration of the contest. What do you expect? Them to take them off halfway through and switch them to 12s? But I guess these days, anything happens in boxing, right? The boys will follow similar rules to Jake Paul and Mike Tyson in November, but that fight was 8 2-minute rounds and 14-ounce gloves. Not similar if it's smaller gloves and 2-minute rounds. Who ruled this for DAZN? It marks the first time Joshua will have contested less than 10 rounds since...
Meanwhile, many boxing analysts and industry insiders have pointed out a completely different problem that goes beyond just comparing these two individual fighters and their abilities. The real issue, according to these experts, is not necessarily with Jake Paul or Anthony Joshua themselves, but rather with the entire structure and business model of the sport of boxing itself in its current state. These analysts argue that boxing as an industry and as a business has created this exact situation through its own failures and shortcomings over many years. They point to a shocking and somewhat embarrassing reality that really highlights how much the sport has changed. Despite all of Anthony Joshua's incredible accomplishments, including being a former world heavyweight champion who held multiple belts simultaneously and winning an Olympic gold medal representing his country on the biggest stage in amateur boxing, his largest potential payday ever in his entire professional career has come from Jake Paul's offer for this fight.
Jake Paul, and this is the real funny thing, he's giving Anthony Joshua, Jake Paul is giving Anthony Joshua, the heavyweight legend, right, in our lifetime, his career high payday. Jake Paul is a fucking A-side. Jake Paul is saying, you're going to be a 245 maximum, motherfucker. Like, Jake Paul's giving orders here. Jake Paul's first on the fucking headline. Like, that is also blowing my mind. Even Eddie Hearn said in an interview earlier this week, he's going to get more for this than he's going to get to fight Tyson Fury if the Fury fight happens. Like, and speaking of Tyson Fury, and this brings me on to you, Joey Knight. How the fuck has Tyson Fury let Jake Paul put the gloves on and get in there with Anthony Joshua before he did? How are you going to fucking look your mate in the eye?
Fury probably had the offer, mate. He's not into the old circus shows. You know what I mean? He's not into all that malarkey.
Oh my God.
He's probably fuming that his brother didn't get the fight, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But listen, I don't know, man. Like, I look at this fight with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, and you constantly hear it. You heard it with Mayweather and McGregor, and you hear it with so many fights. Does it damage their legacy? I would like you to give me an example of a time someone's legacy has been damaged.
And gone in Fury.
From an individual fight. Yeah. No, but in Ngannou Fury ain't really, has it? Like, what I'm saying is, I think that having fights over a prolonged period of time, like Roy Jones Jr., that can damage your legacy. But a one-off fight where realistically you're not going to take no damage. But then
Anthony Yard, who is himself a professional boxer competing at a high level and knows firsthand what it takes to succeed in this sport, gave a much more aggressive and passionate reaction when discussing this potential matchup. Yard did not hold back or sugarcoat his feelings about the situation, and he issued a very direct and serious warning to Anthony Joshua about how he needs to approach this fight if it actually happens.
You're in a shell, does it not?
Absolutely. I mean, you literally go into survival mode because the size difference, you question your manhood, the lot. Everything goes out the window because, like I say, the power of just a jab. And bear it in mind, when you spawn bigger guys, you must have been in the gym, Joe, you spot people below and above. So, if you're the bigger guy, you bring the power down, you take your time. And AJ was essentially taking his time. And even just flicking out that hand, flicking out that jab, the force is crazy. So I really do fear for Jake Paul.
On power, that's what I mean. I've people have been ringing in TalkSport, these boxing experts. Who the knows
Dillian White offered one of the strongest, most passionate, and most genuinely concerned reactions to the announcement and discussion of potential fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. And what made his response particularly notable was that his concern and worry was directed entirely toward Jake Paul himself rather than toward Joshua. White, who is a seasoned heavyweight boxer that has been in the ring with some of the most dangerous punchers in the world and knows exactly what it feels like to face that level of power, admitted openly and honestly that he genuinely could not understand or comprehend why Jake Paul would willingly choose to take such a massive and potentially life-altering risk against a fighter as legitimately dangerous and powerful as Anthony Joshua. To White's way of thinking, based on his years of experience competing at the highest levels of heavyweight boxing, this was not just another big promotional event or a clever marketing move designed to generate attention and make money. This was something far more serious than that.
If Joshua lands clean on Jake Paul's chin, he could end up in a very bad way. So I know it's all entertainment and they're going to break records and Netflix and all that kind of stuff, but we have to understand the dangers that are involved in boxing. And, you know, that's why I say people got to respect Jake Paul for doing this, because he's at risk.
He's at a big risk indeed. I saw something that David Hay was saying where people were kind of worrying for Jake Paul, and David Hay was like, well, he's only going to take a lot of damage if he goes and gets beaten up for 12 rounds. He just gets knocked out in one punch. That's probably one of the best things that could happen in terms of taking the least damage possible.
Yeah, David Hay is right, but also one punch can end your life as well. So you got the two sides. Yeah, he could get badly beaten up if it went 12 rounds, which can be worse long term.
The entire boxing world, including respected analysts, former champions, trainers, and longtime observers of the sport, is showing genuine and serious concerns about this potential matchup, with many voices loudly saying that Jake Paul is walking directly into a huge and potentially catastrophic risk by agreeing to face someone like Anthony Joshua. These concerns are not coming from a place of disrespect toward Jake or from people who simply want to see him fail, but rather from individuals who have seen firsthand what can happen when there is a significant mismatch in size, power, and natural heavyweight ability inside a boxing ring. They are warning that Jake could get seriously and potentially permanently hurt, because he will be fighting against a natural heavyweight who was born with a frame.
Paul has lost his mind. This is probably the worst mistake of his career. Even in the poster, you can see this is a David and Goliath story here. I mean, there's times where I thought Jake is a cruiserweight. There's times where I thought even he could be a light heavyweight. And now he's stepping in with one of the most chiseled, bona fide heavyweights in the world right now in Anthony Joshua. I'm about to break the internet over Jake Paul's face. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but it sounds fucking demented, terrifying. And speaking of the insanity of this thing, here is what the first line is. Jake as a plus 800. I have a feeling that's going to shift even more toward AJ. AJ's the 18-wheeler going 90 down the straightaway, and Jake is in a fucking golf cart going 10 miles an hour, headed right back at the 18-wheeler. It's going to be freaking destruction. But look at the reach. He's got a 6-inch reach on Jake. And trust me, the Chloe concept has told me the 6